Now we need to talk about how to set up After Effects for ACES. So as we progress through this tutorial series, we're going to be going back and forth between Maya and After Effects. And as of Maya 2022, the default color profile is ACES CG. And while ACES CG is a far better profile to use than sRGB, it does present a problem if we are using After Effects. So currently there's no native way in After Effects to view ACES CG, but in order to view our render properly, we're going to have to use a plugin. So admittedly, this is a little bit of a clunky workflow because there's no built-in way of doing this in After Effects, but luckily there is a plugin that we can use, and that's what we're going to be going over in this tutorial. Also want to show you what I think is the best way of viewing ACES CG renders inside of After Effects, which involves leaving the default After Effects color management settings on. I'll explain why that is, and I'll explain how to do that in this video. Right, let's get started. All right, so this is going to be a quick video for installing the OpenColor.io plugin for After Effects. But before we do that, I wanted to explain why we need it. So here I have just a render of the Razor Crest with that HDR again. And this is what the image is supposed to look like. So this is using, if you select in the V-Ray frame buffer, your display correction, you should see the OCIO, which is OpenColor.io, and ACES CG is the color space. And this is what this is up here. So when we save this out of Maya, we actually don't save the display correction. So all images coming from Maya are going to be in a linear format. So they're not going to have that gamma correction embedded in it. So this is just so we can see it. But to maintain the linear workflow, we need to save this out as linear, and then After Effects needs to take in this image and then display its own display correction. So we need to make sure that After Effects can use the same profile, which is the ACES CG and then the view transform right here. So by default, After Effects does not have this functionality. I'm sure it will get it eventually, but right now we have to use a plugin for it. So just to demonstrate this as we go along, I'm going to save this render. I'll just call this Razor Crest test. Click save. And then we can go back to After Effects. So inside After Effects, we're going to double click our project space, go into the Razor Crest test, double click this. And we need to set up our composition. So once again, we're going to select 8 BPC, make sure this is set to 32 bits per channel. And it's vital that you linearize. This absolutely has to be on, or these next steps are not going to work properly. So just make sure it's linear because we are giving After Effects linear files from Maya. So we have to make sure that we're working in a linear space. Okay, so if we were to click and drag this down here to make a new composition, you can see that the image that we get looks absolutely nothing like the image that we saw in Maya. So we saw this really nice image here. The shadows are a lot darker and it doesn't look so washed out. The highlights are also, they're nice, they're not clipped. So inside of Maya here, we go to our info tab, we can hover over these values and you can see that these RGB values are going way over 1. So they are clipped. It looks really bad. The shadows are way too bright. Just overall, you can't work with this image. It's not correct. This is because After Effects isn't expecting this in sRGB space, but really we rendered in ACES CG space. Okay, so what we need is the OpenColor.io plugin for After Effects. So you can just type in After Effects OCIO plugin and go to fnordware.blogspot.com. Okay, so we're going to grab the Windows version, and then I'm going to save file. All right, so if I go to my downloads folder here, we're going to take this OpenColor.io AE, right click, we're going to do extract all, extract. And inside this, there's going to be a manual. If you want to grab the manual, you can, but we really only need this AEX file. This is the plugin file. And then we just need to copy this. You can either cut it or copy it. Next, we're going to navigate to our program files. So we're going to go to C, Program Files, Adobe, After Effects, Support Files, Plugins, and then we're just going to paste it right here. You would just say paste. I already have the plugin installed, so I don't need to do that, but you would just click paste and it would go right there. And then you want to launch After Effects. So if you have After Effects open already, you would want to restart it, then open it back up again. So let's assume that you've already restarted After Effects. Inside the effects and presets, you're going to look for an effect called OpenColor.io. This is the name of the effect. And then the way that we apply this, right click down here, go to New, Adjustment Layer, click Enter to name it. Let's call this OCIO. We can click and drag the effect over here to OCIO, and then it's going to request a configuration file. There are lots of different profiles for OpenColor.io. It's not just for ACES CG. There's lots of different ones, especially when you start using different footage from cameras. And there's a whole heap of reasons why you would use OpenColor.io. It's not just for rendering from Maya. But we can use this to grab the ACES CG profile. And in doing that, we need to grab the configuration file. So Maya provides a configuration file for us. So we're going to click on Custom. And to find the configuration file location, we go back into Maya. And the easy way to do that in Maya is to go back to the V-Ray frame buffer, go to Display Correction, and then on the OCIO file right here, click on the little folder icon and select this path up here. Do Control-C to copy. Go back to After Effects, paste that path in, click Enter, and then we can grab the OCIO config here. So this file contains a whole bunch of different conversions for different cameras, different color spaces. So what we're going to do, instead of convert, we're going to be on display. I'm going to select display. Now for the input space, what we have to do is go to Scene Linear, ACES CG, and then the display would be set to sRGB, that's correct. And then the view is set to ACES 1.0 SDR video. This matches exactly what Maya's is right here, and what the color space input, display device input, and the view transform is inside of V-Ray. Now, here's one other problem. After Effects by default will color manage your entire composition for you, and it's expecting this to be in linear space. But because of the OpenColor.io config, it is actually doing all the gamma correction for you. So After Effects, after it sees this, still thinks this is in the wrong gamma and will gamma correct it again. So in order to fix that, what we're going to do is type in Color Profile Converter. We're going to grab this. We click and drag this underneath the OpenColor.io. So on the Color Profile Converter on the input profile, I'm going to go up to sRGB. You can see it change there. And then on the output profile, we're going to say sRGB again. And then we're going to linearize the output like this. So let me show you what we've just done. So by default, After Effects assumes the image is going to be linear. And because of that, it thinks it's being really helpful by applying an inverse gamma curve. However, the OCI plugin also adds a curve as well. So when you have two curves, you get a double correction like this. So now the image is way too bright. So if I go back to After Effects here, and I turn off this color profile converter, it's way too bright, and that's because there's an extra gamma curve that's being applied. So with the color profile converter, we're simply adding an inverse curve to that. So what this gamma curve does is it basically just cancels out one of these, and then you don't get a double correction. So it's going through back and forth, like all of these different corrections to go back and forth. And then at the end, we get a gamma that is correct for final output. All right, so I hope that makes sense. You have to have that plugin in order to view your renders properly. So that is a requirement. So if you have any questions on the installation of that or why we're doing what we're doing, just let me know and I can clarify it for you. All right, I hope that quick explanation of ACES and how to set this up in After Effects was useful. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.